Yo, what's up, guys? We're back. We're going to be doing another breakdown and predictions video. This week it's for a pretty big card, UFC 282. I would say it's definitely one of the weaker pay-per-view cards of the year, but it's the last one, and I'm definitely pretty pumped up for it. So, should be a good night of fights. And just right before we get started on the video, let's try to get 100 likes on this video. Let's try to put some comments down below. I'd really appreciate it. That would really help push the video and let some more people see it. I was going to try to put this video out yesterday, but then they did add that Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Morono fight, so I had to look into it a little bit, and that's why it's coming out here on Wednesday. But next week I'll try to put it out earlier, and sorry about last week once again for putting it out so late. But yeah, hopefully we can get the views up a little more for this one and get some likes. Let's get to 100 likes if possible. Put some comments down below. I would really appreciate that, guys. So really hope that happens. And then just besides that, if you guys want to make some money before Christmas for the holidays, definitely recommend you go over to the Patreon. There's a ton of stuff going on in MMA this week. We got LFA, we got Aries FC, we got Bellator, we got this UFC pay-per-view, we got a couple other events, and I'm going to be having some action on quite a few fights and quite a few events, and definitely going to be making some money this weekend. So if you want to go over there to patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru, get some money for Christmas, get some money for the holidays, then definitely recommend you go over there and check it out and join the crew over there for the Patreon, support the channel, and get paid. So check out patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru if you're interested in that. And I'm going to have all the content for Bellator and all the other events this week over there. And I'm going to be trying to put out a prediction video for Bellator tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But outside of that, let's get started with this card, with this first fight. We got Cameron Simone. He's going to be taking on Steven Koslow. Both these guys are making their UFC debuts. For Steven Koslow, he has won 16 fights in a row. If you include his amateur career, he's 6-0 as a pro. So he's undefeated. Or actually, he was 10-1 as an amateur, excuse me. But he has won 16 fights in a row after losing his first amateur fight. And he's pretty composed. He's a pretty solid fighter. Obviously, he's coming in here on short notice. He's an underdog here, but he's a wrestler, grappler. He's composed. He likes to come forward and make fights ugly pretty much, but he has decent boxing and good in the clinch. He throws a lot of volume to get to the clinch. He is flat-footed, but he has a high guard, good check hook, decent right hand. His uppercut is pretty nice, and he'll throw some knees and elbows on the inside, but flat-footed, hittable. And he's fought a low level of opposition, so this is a big step up for him. But basically, he tries to use his striking to get in the clinch and set up the takedowns. He has nice wrestling, and once he gets in the top position, he's strong. He has good control. He has pretty good composure. He does a good job of not really making a lot of mistakes and staying methodical. And a solid submission game. And off of his back, he'll throw up submissions as well, but he can't accept bottom position, which I would not do against Cameron Simone. And as of now, he has been able to finish all of his pro wins, Koslow, in the first round. So his cardio, I feel, would probably be good just because of the style he fights, but it hasn't been tested in years, and he hasn't been in a tough fight in a long time. For Cameron Simone, he's a 21-year-old kid, but already a monster. He has a super bright future. He's an all-action, all-the-time fighter. On the feet, he's incredibly high volume. He throws a plethora of attacks. He's fast. He has good footwork. He'll switch stances. He flows well. He has great kicks, nice kicks to all parts of the body, a lot of different types of kicks. He has nice counter uppercuts, counter hooks, and he'll work switch stance punch attacks from the outside. His range striking is, I think, superior in this fight. And if he can use his footwork, distance control, attack from range, he probably will be able to get the finish. He's faster, slicker. He goes for the kill. He throws heavy punches. And his defense in wrestling and grappling is what's going to be tested here. In his last fight, he did make some mistakes going for clinch throws, which got him taken down. But overall, Simone's takedown defense, and more importantly, his get-ups are very high level. He has an endless gas tank, great ability to create scrambles and work back to his feet or the top position when he gets taken down. And that's going to be crucial in this fight with Koslow. Koslow, at times, will sacrifice position for submissions. And I feel like Simone, if he can get on top, he'll be able to control the position and dole out damage more than Koslow does. Koslow really isn't a big ground and pounder. And Simone's going to be a great addition to the UFC if he's brought up correctly. And I think he's going to get the finish in the first or second round here. He just has too much experience. He's fought the better opponents in comparison to Koslow. On the feet, I feel he has a big advantage. And I think he'll also be able to get the better of the grappling. This is the grappling is the best chance for Koslow to win. If he can get on top, he's going to have a shot to finish. But I think that Simone's going to be able to push the fight longer and take over. So I'm going to say he gets a second round TKO here on Steven Koslow. And this next fighter here, this is going to be a banger between Daniel Da Silva and Vinicius Salvador. Daniel Da Silva, he's getting one final opportunity to get a win in the UFC. So far, Da Silva's really struggled. He's 0-3 in 3 UFC fights. He's been finishing all of them. His last fight, Da Silva did almost knock his opponent out before having the tables turned, and he is dangerous. So I believe that's why the UFC is keeping him around. His opponent, Vinicius Salvador, is making his UFC debut. He earned his contract through the Contender Series, and he's won 4 or 5 fights overall. He's 14-4. His last fight was his first fight outside of Brazil, and he was able to deliver a second round KO TKO, look good. And now he's going to be looking to close out the year 3-0 and get his first UFC win. And for Salvador, he's a big 125er. He's tall, he's long. In this fight, he's going to be able to match the size of Da Silva, who's usually a big 125er as well. And on the feet, he's a dynamic southpaw. At his best, he's pressuring. He has good feints and fakes, very fast, nice crosses and hook counters. And he's good at staying in and out, controlling distance, and just landing the counter return shots, pot shotting guys. He'll attack the body, keep the volume super high, real nice knees. When he's pressured, he can be a little bit nonchalant at times. He's very athletic. He has elite head movement. He'll slip and evade a lot of shots. But he can let fighters back him up, and sometimes they do connect. And he is dangerous in exchanges. He has a good chin. His style is dangerous, though, because he has been hurt in many fights. He's been finished by strikes twice. He is very defensively irresponsible at times in order to create offense, and that obviously is not the smartest thing to do. And he does do a nice job of reversing takedown attempts with judo throws, and I think it's a high-level wrestler. He could get exposed and grinded out, but he has decent grappling defense. And for Daniel Da Silva, he's only shown to be a one-round fighter at this point of his career. He's dangerous. His striking has gotten better since joining the UFC, but he hasn't shown the cardio. On the feet, he likes to pressure, slip and rip with the lead cross, check hook. He has nasty kicks, dangerous kicks, real fast. His defense is not good, though. He's very hittable on the counter. When he's forced to go backwards to Silva, when he's forced to move backwards, he's very ineffective. He becomes low volume. He becomes hittable. He does slow down as well. He'll start to make mistakes, which get him knocked out. And his bread and butter is the grappling. His wrestling is not bad. He has good doubles. He's an aggressive submission hunter, especially early. And he will sacrifice position for submissions, but he has a good full guard and he likes to be there. But that's been a bad thing in some fights. He's gotten pounded out, such as in his last fight where he got finished with ground and pound. And he's going to want to get to the ground, try to find the submission on top or from full guard. And that's how he's earned the majority of his wins. In Da Silva's first fight with UFC, he got fairly close to catching Jeff Molina in the first round, so it's best to avoid the ground. I don't think Da Silva is going to be, able to get a finish in the second or third, or, unless he paces himself much differently. So he's kind of a first round or bust type of fighter from a cardio perspective. But this should be a really fun fight, and it should be close. I mean, I'm going to say Vinicius Salvador catches Da Silva and knocks him out in the first or second round. But I think this fight's going to be finished early, and I feel like either fighter, whoever wins, is either going to get an early second-round finish or a first-round finish, because I just feel like both these guys are kind of defensively irresponsible. They like to go out there, put on a show, look for the finish, and I think one guy's going to get knocked out. It's either going to be Salvador being a little bit nonchalant, where he gets either knocked out cold or gets dropped and submitted, or he's going to be able to kind of use his flashy striking to catch Da Silva and knock him out. So I think it's going to be one or the other. And I'm going to go with Vinicius Salvador, though, just because of the point that he's in his career. He's more experienced, and he's on a 4-fight winning streak, whereas Da Silva's lost 3 in a row. He just got finished with strikes in his last fight, and I don't really know where he's going to be mentally. So I got to go with Vinicius Salvador as the pick, and I'm going to say he wins via first-round knockout. And for this next fight, we got a featherweight fight between Erik Silva and TJ Brown. And Erik Silva, he's getting a late start in the UFC, but at 35 years old, he's making his debut. And he won in dominant fashion on the Contender Series to earn this contract. He's won his last 6 fights in a row by finish. And his first UFC fight is against a fun action fighter in TJ Brown, who's also beatable. So it's a good matchup to get his name out there and win with a fun finish potentially. TJ Brown's kind of been a fighter who's been up and down in the UFC. And in his MMA career in general, he's kind of a ball dropper. Whenever it seems as if he's getting on the right track, a loss happens, but he has been able to come up clutch and get wins when he needs to. And he had won 2 fights in a row previous to his last fight, and he was a favorite over Charlie and Nerdy and Beck, but he lost the decision in that one. And now he's in a make-or-break fight here. He's facing a 35-year-old UFC newcomer. Overall, he's only 2-3 in the UFC, and I don't think he can afford another loss. He did train at this camp, or for this camp at Glory MMA, which puts a monkey wrench into his fight week because he can no longer be affiliated or bring anyone affiliated with that gym to fight week. I assume he's going to just come with his old team from Westside MMA in Arkansas in his corner, and he does have Bryce Mitchell on this card also, who also had a little bit of struggles. You know, he also was over there with Glory, but I think that they're just probably going to bring those Arkansas coaches over and hopefully have a seamless transition in a fight week. And his opponent, Eric Silva, his fighting style is really fun to watch. He's a tall, rangy fighter for 145. He's a dynamic striker. He has a bladed white stance. He'll switch stances. He holds his hands low, and he has good in and out movement. He does a good job pressuring opponents, throwing heavy kicks and all different kinds of kicks. He throws kicks to all parts of the body. Nice leg kicks, lead leg side kicks, spin kicks, front kicks, round kicks, and a very dynamic guy, very fast kicks. And he's a good grappler. He'll mix in takedowns. Usually when he can back fighters up to the cage, as double as his main weapon. But the weakest part of his game does look like his defensive wrestling. I have seen fighters control and get Silva down against the cage. Silva does look pretty dynamic with his grappling too, though. He has good sweeps, good reversals, pretty good scrambling ability. And he's good at getting the back in scrambles. He's dangerous with submissions when he can get on top, either through the double or through a reversing position. And he has nasty ground and pound from the top as well. Very athletic, dynamic, dangerous guy overall. He hasn't really been tested much in recent fights, and I do wonder if a wrestler will be able to just grind him out. But this fight, he's probably not going to have to worry about TJ Brown just absolutely dominating him with the grappling. I mean, TJ Brown is a serviceable wrestler, but I don't see him as the level of fighter who's going to be able to take down and control Silva on the mat for 3 rounds. Silva's fight IQ is high, and in his last fight, he was facing a real high-level striker. He got the takedown immediately, and he does a good job taking on strikers and striking with grapplers. I feel like he's going to know that he's going to want to keep the range, leg kick, and strike from the outside here, which we've seen Danny Chavez do on TJ Brown and be effective with it. And I think that Silva can have a similar type of game plan. But one thing about Silva is I haven't really seen him go late in a lot of fights, so I can't really speak for his cardio or his grit. And TJ Brown, he does have that. TJ Brown is a gritty guy with great cardio. He comes in shape, and he's going to fight to win. And when you look at TJ Brown on the feet, he has improved his striking, but he's still a chinny guy. He does have decent distance control, leg kicks, and fairly technical striking. But I feel like Silva is on another level on the feet overall and will probably be able to get the reads, the timing, and start to really pick TJ apart. So I think TJ Brown's going to want to wrestle. And I see him potentially getting some takedowns early, but I just don't really have the faith that he's going to be able to keep position or avoid getting submitted. He's been submitted several times. And I also believe that Silva will probably be able to work back to his feet. The only thing I'm worried about is Silva's cardio. If TJ Brown can get some early takedowns and Silva really gasses out, then that's where potentially Brown can get the win. But I think Eric Silva's been set up to sink or swim here. TJ Brown isn't a pushover. He's fairly well-rounded, but I think if Silva is going to be a good fighter for the UFC, he'll get the finish here. He's 35 years old, so the UFC can't afford to slow play him. Silva has all the tools. He has great counter-striking, speed, footwork, good wrestling offensively. His defensive wrestling is where, like I said, I'm going to be a little bit worried. But I think he'll probably be able to get the better of the grappling. So I'm going to pick Silva to win this fight via first-round submission. I think he's going to hurt Brown, get on top, and end the fight on the ground. So I'm going to go with Eric Silva here to look good in his UFC debut. And in this next one, man, we got another great fight here between Billy Quarantillo and Alexander Hernandez. And for Billy Q, he's making his return to fighting after being on the sidelines for over a year. He was really active in his first year and a half at the UFC. He fought 5 times. He made a name for himself as an action fighter, and he's gone 4-2 in his 6 UFC fights. He is coming off of a loss, but you know you're going to get a fun Billy Q fight, or a fun fight whenever Billy Q is in the cage. And for Alexander Hernandez, he's dropping down 145 pounds. He had a 9-fight run at 155, and he went 5-4, kind of a fringe top 15 guy at lightweight. And I do think he was a smaller lightweight. And this could be a good decision for him to drop to 45s. It's not like he's an old guy. It's not like he's as someone that's lost his athleticism and stuff like that. So I think that potentially coming down to 145, fighting guys more his size, could give him a jump start in his career. He's a bit in no man's land after starting his career really hot in the UFC. He's cooling off now, and his last fight was the submission loss to Nato Moicano. So this is one of his last chances probably to make another run at a UFC title, at the rankings and stuff like that. So huge fight for Hernandez. And yeah, man, I mean, I feel like this is going to be an entertaining back and forth fight. Billy Q's a guy that is, to me, not really technically the best fighter, but he's a dog, man. He throws a lot of volume, good pressure. He, in this fight, is going to be trying to fight with a really high pace, I believe, to try to get Hernandez tired. Hernandez is a guy that gassed out even at 155, so with the weight cut, if it's a little bit harder, he might get real tired real quick. And Billy Q, he'll throw a lot of overhand, switch stance attacks, and a lot of kicks on the outside, but kind of loopy, sloppy striking. I feel like his defense isn't the best either, and he's more of a guy that early he takes a lot of punishment. Sometimes he'll get hurt, get dropped, and then he stays in guys' faces. He doesn't let them, deter him or get him out of there, and then they start to get tired, and his cardio and pace just takes over, and he'll start to really beat guys up and, dominate the fight. With Hernandez, I mean, I feel like early on he's going to have a huge advantage on the feet technically. He's real good in and out. He throws slick counters. He has good straight punches, throws nice combinations, decent kicks on the outside, and I think he's the much faster and more powerful fighter. He throws straighter, cleaner punches, cleaner kicks, and I think when he's fresh, he's going to have a big advantage. And another area where I think Hernandez has a big edge is the wrestling. I think he's a far superior wrestler to Billy Q. He's a better grappler as well. And we have seen Alexander Hernandez go in there and beat fighters like OAM by just taking him down and controlling him. And we've seen Billy Q get taken down and grinded on by much lesser guys than Alexander Hernandez. So I do feel like the takedowns are going to be there for Alex. And if he can control on top and get some rest time, then I could see this being a fairly straightforward decision win for Alexander Hernandez, using his footwork, his movement, his superior speed, landing some counter strikes, maybe even getting that knockout in the first round. And if he can't do it, leaning on the wrestling a little more, getting some takedowns and mixing in the win that way. Billy Q's just going to have to be super offensive everywhere. If he gets taken down, he's going to have to throw up submissions and try to get back up to his feet, which he does do. But I feel like Billy Q doesn't have the greatest get-ups, and his submission game off bottom isn't really elite. And unless he can really wear on the gas tank of Hernandez and make it a real rough, rugged fight, then I don't really see him winning this one. So I'm actually going to go with the underdog here. I'm going to go with Alexander Hernandez. I just think he's the better technical fighter, the better athlete. And as long as he doesn't gas or the weight cut to 45 isn't a huge issue for him, then I think he's going to get the job done here. I mean, he's just coming off winning the first round against Nato Moicano. And yes, he did fall apart in the second, but he's fighting real high-level guys, and he's being competitive with them. So I feel like Billy Q's a bit of a step down, and I think Hernandez should be able to get the win. And continuing through the card here, we got two guys looking to bounce back. Chris Curtis and Joaquim Buckley are both coming off losses that snapped winning streaks. And Chris Curtis, he's a fighter who's been very active since joining the UFC, and he's had a lot of success. He's made more money late in his career than at any point in his whole career. And even though he's older at 35 and almost had 40 pro fights, he's still very dangerous. And as of now, Curtis has fought all grapplers and wrestlers in his UFC run. Now he's getting a different test. He's facing an explosive striker in Joaquim Buckley. And Buckley's a fighter that's been up and down in the UFC, but he made a name for himself primarily off the knockout over Impa Kasanganay. And after that, he actually went on Joe Rogan recently and kind of has a decent personality outside the cage where he could talk and get some publicity that way. And he's moving down to 170 after this fight, but he's had a 5-3 run so far at middleweight in the UFC, and he's done well. He traveled to France for his last fight, took on a Frenchman in Nasruddin Imavov, and lost a decision there, but he was competitive. And before that, he had won 3 fights in a row, so he's going to be looking to return to that form. And this is a bigger fight, in my opinion, for Chris Curtis, though. Even though Curtis started his UFC career 3-0, he quickly got into the rankings. I still think that there are question marks about how he'll do long-term in the UFC, and if he loses this fight, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be in a win or get cut situation for his next fight, and definitely he would be, dropping farther and farther away from the rankings. And Curtis should probably not have taken his last fight so quickly. He returned less than 4 weeks after his win over Rodolfo Vieira, took on Hermanson, and even had to travel to London to take the fight. But all that's in the past now, and I just think this is a must-win situation for him now. For Buckley, he's 28 years old. He's very active, fun to watch, and he does a pretty good job marketing himself outside the cage. So even if he loses, I think he'll stick around and have a lot of fun fights at 170. And Buckley's a beast. The guy is incredibly powerful. He's explosive. He has well-rounded skills. And recently he started to fight more tactically and smart. He was saying that he did not have a coach or really a gym that he trained at for years before joining the UFC. And then just recently, a couple fights ago, he teamed up with Murcielago and May in Detroit there. And he started to really show some improvements and show, more importantly, just a more... what's the word I'm trying to use? He's just more, he has a more refined game where it seems like he has a game plan and knows what he wants to do in the cage much more than before. And in this fight, I anticipate he's going to want to try to use his speed, footwork, stick and move. Very fast, good job circling away, avoiding fighters' power, then darting in with big punches. His combinations are fast and dangerous. Good job using the head movement to get in and then just unload, usually with big wild hooks or 3-2s and 2-3s. And you also mix in the level changes, nice doubles, so fighters have to be worried about both the explosive blitzes and then the double. And on the outside, he has excellent kicks. He'll throw kicks to all parts of the body with both legs. Very creative with his kicks as well. Real nice lead leg kicks. And if fighters can pressure Buckley and back him up, then he does tend to just spam combinations, which are dangerous, but he isn't necessarily that technically sound in the pocket. And I think that Curtis would really invite a fight in a phone booth because Buckley has been knocked out a few times. So if you land clean on him, you have the potential to finish him, and he is open to counters in the pocket. And I wouldn't say Buckley has a bad chin necessarily, but obviously his chin isn't elite. And he's a decent wrestler, and he has the aforementioned level changes he'll mix in and okay control in the clinch against the cage. His top control really isn't the best. He also isn't the greatest off of his back. He is hard to hold down, and in this fight, I don't think he's going to really have to worry about any takedown attempts against him. He has great cardio. He can push a high pace, especially at middleweight. And he actually was able to outstrike Imavov in round 2 and 3 and made it a real close fight with the ranked fighter. And his opponent, Chris Curtis, he's a veteran. He's a workman. He is a very good boxer, good cardio durability. His takedown defense is elite. And he does a good job of staying disciplined, waiting for his moments. He was losing until he got the knockout in his first 2 UFC fights. And style-wise, Curtis, he doesn't move too much. He likes to stay in a phone booth and throw hand combinations, nice counter punching ability, good check hook, good rear hand. He'll rip the body, and he'll explode in with 3-2s. He isn't really an active kicker, and he's fairly one-dimensional, which did cost him in his last fight. You could see the visible frustration during and after the fight from Curtis due to his inability to close the distance and make it the fight he wanted. Curtis can get hit with kicks and shots from the outside, and as long as fighters keep on the movement and don't stand in front of Curtis, they usually are safe. And I would try to mix in more high kicks in this fight if I'm Chris Curtis, just to try to stop the lateral movement of Buckley. And Buckley does like to dip a lot and box, which, obviously could get him head kicked, and it did get him head kicked against Alessio De Chirico. And I would also, if I was Curtis, just try to maybe just throw leg kicks or something where you could get Buckley more stationary body attacks, and he also is a really elite body puncher. But if he can slow down Buckley, taunt him, do anything, fight his ego, get him to stand in front of you, and then Chris Curtis can be too polished. I think he'll find the knockout if he can get him to be in a boxing type fight. And his takedown defense is elite in this fight. I mean, I don't really see Buckley going for takedowns, but Curtis stays very composed. He fights at a solid pace. He's a guy that's fought almost, this can be his 40th fight, so he tends to pick up as fight goes on and get slow cook guys, and he definitely is someone that isn't going to get tired. And Jack Hermanson laid the blueprint for what Buckley needs to do here, though. Buckley should keep on his movement game, use his kicks, dart in, dart out with his combinations, not exchange, don't stand in front of Curtis, come in great shape so he can absorb the body shots or the counter punches, be able to recover if he gets hurt, and then stick on the movement. And Buckley will not have to worry about someone trying to take him down in this fight. That's how he lost his last fight. And Chris Curtis is not as fast as Buckley. There's definitely more danger in closing the distance and trying to get inside on Buckley, who throws hammers in comparison to Curtis. Curtis is going to need to take risks to win, though, because I think that Buckley will fight smart. Buckley's going to not just stand in front of Curtis. He's going to not fight him at punching range. I see him using his footwork movement, stay on the outside, kick and run, occasionally darting with some counters, try to land counters when Curtis gets aggressive. Buckley should work the calf kicks, try to slow the pressure of Curtis. If Buckley slows down Curtis, then, he'll just beat him up from the outside. And Buckley has come in great shape recently. I think he's going to do that in this fight. And I feel like Buckley's going to win this fight, man. I think he's going to win a decision just because he's going to be too mobile. He's not going to give Curtis the fight he wants. It's going to look kind of like the Hernandez fight. And this next fight, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Dalcha Lungiambula. This is one of the fights that I care about least on the card. Two guys that are on 3-fight losing streaks. They're not really trustworthy, but I got to go with Edmen Shahbazyan. I mean, he's 10 years younger. He's the fighter that the UFC is trying to market. And I feel as if, his striking is a lot better than Lungiambula's. Lungiambula is a guy that kind of chooses explosiveness to throw big overhands, and he is dangerous, but he's very vulnerable to being countered and hit, and the striking is just not that technical, whereas Edmen Shahbazyan has very high-level striking. I feel like he's probably one of the top 10 strikers in the weight class, and, the issue with Edmen has been his wrestling defense and his cardio, and with Lungiambula, he is going to have the threat of the takedown there, so that is kind of what's making me not even want to sniff Edmen Shahbazyan minus 300. I mean, Lungiambula has good judo, and he's explosive. He can close the gap and hit some doubles, but Lungiambula doesn't really have the top control, so he can't really hold guys down. His last fight, he got caught in a guillotine, and he's just someone that, if he can't knock you out with an explosive blitz, or he can't just hold you down because you're an inferior grappler, then he struggles. I mean, I feel like that's why he was better at the higher weight, like light heavyweight and heavyweight. Because when you take those guys down, they usually don't get back up or have any sort of get-up game. So you could kind of just take him down and control him. And he had a big speed edge at that weight. But now at this weight, at 185, he doesn't really have that speed advantage. The guys are better at getting up to their feet when they get taken down. And his cardio is not the best either. So it's not like he can push the pace and try to get Edmen tired. So ultimately, I'm going to say Edmen wins this fight via second round knockout. But I don't really have a lot of confidence in either guy here performing. And even though I would be surprised to see Edmen lose, honestly. I just, minus 300, I think is way too steep. And up next here, we have a really interesting fight. Obviously, the headline here is Raul Rosas Jr. making his debut at 18 years old. The guy is pretty phenomenal, man. I mean, you got to hand it to him. He made it to the UFC at 18, the youngest UFC fighter ever. He was able to perform in the Contender Series and look really good. He didn't let the moment get to him. And it's an interesting fight here, obviously, against Jay Perrin, who's a big step up in competition, if you ask me. Mando Gutierrez, he's the best fighter that Raul Rosas has fought to date. But Gutierrez, kind of a regional scene guy, whereas Jay Perrin, maybe you could call him a regional scene guy too. He hasn't been able to get a win in the UFC. He's 0-2. But he's been competitive against guys in the top 15 in the UFC. He's won titles on the regional scene for good promotions like CES. So I feel like he has a big step up in competition. And it's another interesting fight, too, because both these guys did train at the same gym fairly recently for a good period of time. I think Rosas Jr. more he was using the gym more as just to train there and have his own guys with them. So I don't think he was really doing a lot of work with Jay Perrin or the other syndicate fighters, really. But he did work with the coaches, and they do have a little bit of an idea of what he's good at, what he likes to do. And, Rosas, he's 6-0, so he's the guy that has the momentum here. Perrin, obviously, is on a 2-fight losing streak, but Perrin is 10-6. I mean, he has 10 more fights than Rosas does, which is a big difference. And he has title fight experience. He has more UFC experience. And this is a do-or-die situation for Jay Perrin. I mean, he has to be coming in here with everything to avoid going 0-3, avoid losing to a teenager. And if he can't get the win over Rosas, then he's going to get cut. But if he can get the win, I mean, that's a big victory for him. Rosas is a popular name right now, and it would really elevate Jay Perrin's profile. And Jay Perrin, I think, is an underrated fighter. He comes in great shape. He's very durable. He can mix it up. On the feet, he isn't the best striker, but he has fast hands, solid combinations, good boxing. His left hook is really nice. He does a good job attacking the body to come up to the head, and he throws, fast hands on the inside. His footwork and evasiveness on the outside is solid, and he does have limitations. His reach, his athleticism aren't, really high level, and he's hittable. He closes distance. It could, struggle a little bit with closing distance at time and struggle a little bit with kicks. And he is a dog, though. I mean, he's willing to take damage to give damage. He pushes a high pace. And in this particular fight, I think he should have the edge on the feet. And Perrin's a good wrestler. He has nice double legs, good clinch control. On top, he has good back takes, good rear naked chokes. And he's tough. He has good defensive wrestling. He's going to have to prove that here. And he's going to have to respect the grappling of Rosas. He shouldn't go in there and get a takedown right away in the first round. And just know, Rosas' jiu-jitsu is dangerous. Perrin from the top position, I think, could do well. But he should engage on the ground with Rosas Jr. Because Rosas, you know, that's where he wants to be. He wants to be on the ground scrambling, trying to create submission opportunities. And his last fight, he did have his back taken. If Perrin can get to the back, he has good rear naked chokes and control. So maybe if it's later in the fight, like late second, third round, where Rosas is getting tired, and you feel you can have a good opportunity to get the back and get the finish or control there and dominate, then okay. But don't go in there early and, you know, use your ego and fight grappling and try to out-grapple Rosas. That would not be a good game plan. Perrin's cardio is really good, so he's not going to get tired, and he's going to be able to match the pace. But he just needs to fight smart here. Sprawl and brawl, box, and try to pressure, get on the inside, and use those combinations. For Raul Rosas Jr., he's a grappler. He pushes a real high pace. On the feet, he's not that great or polished yet, but he's athletic. He'll throw some pretty fast kicks, some flying attacks. And he doesn't really have really much boxing to speak of. His boxing defense looks pretty bad, but he's fast. And, you know, he has some interesting ways to get the takedown, like he was feigning flying knees to shoot in on the double. And there haven't really been fighters that I've seen that have been able to stuff his takedowns and keep Rosas on the feet. So I think when we see that, unless he can land an explosive flying knee or something crazy, he's going to get beat up standing. Unless he just has some striking that we haven't seen yet, which I don't really think he does. And Rosas Jr. does a great job using his size. He's a pretty big 135er, even for, you know, being only 18. And he's good at chaining takedowns together, eventually getting it to the ground. On the ground, he's super aggressive. Good job of giving him enough space to let fighters try to get up and then taking the mount or taking the back. And from the back, he's good at flattening fighters out, attacking the neck. He was able to run through all of his opponents up until his last fight. His last fight, he did have to battle through some adversity, even though he did pretty much dominate. He, you know, was in a couple deep guillotines. He got reversed a couple times. He almost got his back taken. And he got put in some bad spots. But I feel like his last opponent also had horrible fight IQ. I mean, he was inviting grappling match. He was pulling guard. He was jumping guillotine. And just had a real bad game plan. I don't think he had the striking to really just outstrike Rosas either. So I think Gutierrez just wasn't a great matchup to beat Rosas Jr. But I'm actually going to go with Jay Perrin here. I mean, I think Perrin on the feet has a big advantage. I think his wrestling, defense, and grappling should be enough to keep it standing or work back to his feet, win some scrambles. And Perrin has fought way higher level opponents. His fights with Mario Batista and Arichi Lang were competitive. He arguably won a round against Mario Batista, who's a top 15 guy. And, you know, being 18 in the UFC is awesome, but I think getting a fight at the Apex, not having a crowd or a pay-per-view fight would have been a much better introduction to the UFC for Rosas than T-Mobile. I think he could have an adrenaline dump here if he can't get the takedowns, end up getting finished in the second or third. And Perrin needs to win to save his career, so I think he's going to be extremely motivated. He's going to be able to match the pace, and I think Perrin could maybe even go for takedowns later in the fight and break Rosas. And we did see Manny Gutierrez take Rosas down, control him a bit in round 3, almost took the back. And I'm going to say Perrin wins by late second round TKO in this one. I think the line is really inflated. I don't understand how you could put Perrin as this big of a dog looking at the resumes of both. Perrin's coaches have also seen how Rosas wrestles and some of his tricks on the ground. So I think that's also going to help Perrin take the win here. And I'm going to go with Jay Perrin. And we got the big boys coming up next year at the heavyweight. And Jairzinho, Rozenstruik, and Chris Daukaus, they were both knocking on the door of a UFC title shot at one point, but have fallen off hard. They've lost back-to-back fights. Rozenstruik has lost three of 5 and 3 of 4, actually. And Chris Daukaus has started off his UFC career. He got 4 brutal knockout wins in a row. And if he would have beaten Derek Lewis last December in his first main event, I think he would have been one fight away from fighting for the title. And his last fight, he did get kind of lucky, though, because he got to fight Curtis Blades, which was a big opportunity. He fought back-to-back top 5 guys. But unfortunately, he got knocked out again, this time in the second round. And obviously, Derek Lewis and Blades are 2 of the best in the world, so it's no shame in losing to them. But he has to win here. His resume is not that good when you look at the fighters he beat on his run. And if he loses 3 in a row, I think he'll be in the danger zone of getting cut. For Jairzinho Rozenstruik, since fighting Francis Ngannou, he just has not been able to reclaim that momentum. Before fighting Francis, Rozenstruik was 10-0. He was riding high with confidence. He called out Francis, got what he wished for, but did not end well for him. He got knocked out in 20 seconds. And since then, Rozenstruik has been able to win 2 fights in a row. He did bounce back with a win over Junior Dos Santos, but lost the decision to Cyril Gane. And in his last 2 fights, he got outgrappled by Curtis Blades, and then Alexander Volkov knocked him out in the first round. In the Blades fight, Rozenstruik, he just got taken down and didn't really take a lot of damage. But getting knocked out in the first round against Volkov is a little alarming, especially since he got knocked out recently against Ngannou in 20 seconds. And Rozenstruik is only 2-4 in his last 6 fights, so he can't afford to drop a 3rd fight in a row on Saturday. And ultimately, though, I think Rozenstruik should get the KO here. It's a good matchup for him on paper. He's the bigger, more powerful guy, and his game is to find the counter punches. Chris Daukaus is an aggressive boxer, fast hands, good speed, but he's not dynamic with his game. He really only boxes. So he has to close the gap and get in the danger zone, and he does have fast 3-2s and 2-3s. He'll flurry on the inside. His hands are technical, but he has a tendency to open up and expose himself to counters when he closes his distance. He doesn't take shots the best either. And Jairzinho's super low volume, so if Daukaus can land, get in, get out, and use his footwork, he could win. But I don't see that being a likely outcome. Even though Daukaus has a big advantage in the grappling realm, he doesn't have the wrestling to get it to the ground, and I don't think Rozenstruik is going to have to worry about someone taking him down here. And I think Rozenstruik is probably going to be able to snipe Daukaus as he enters range with a jab or rear hand and knock him out. Daukaus can struggle and be overwhelmed with blitz and backed up too. And I could see Rozenstruik exploding in and on a combination and getting a knockout that way as well. Both fighters are coming off knockout losses, so the fight could start slow. And Daukaus obviously has a chance to get a KO too. He has a puncher's chance in any fight he has. He also has fast hands and pretty solid boxing. So if he gets on the inside, can rip a combination. He could put Jairzinho out. But I'm going to say Rozenstruik wins by 2nd round KO TKO in this one. And I think it's a fairly good matchup for him on paper, but it's hard to trust either guy with a bet, honestly. And this next fight has some heat on it between Ilia Topuria and Bryce Mitchell. I would say this is one of the best fights on the card. And Bryce Mitchell, he took some umbrage with the way Ilia Topuria got this fight. Topuria was constantly calling out Mitchell, being disrespectful online, and obviously, he hyped the fight. But both guys have fired back with some trash talk on each other now. They hyped the fight really good and got everyone excited for it. But Bryce Mitchell seems to be the guy that's taking it more personal. I mean, I've seen him say things like, "I'd rather die than lose to Ilia Topuria." So he's going in there with a lot of added motivation. And both fighters are undefeated in their pro careers, and they've been dominant. Ilia Topuria, he definitely has had to face more adversity in the UFC. He got dropped and almost got finished in his last fight, but he came back to get the win. He has had some issues making 145, bungled his fight with Charles Jourdain by missing weight by a lot, and obviously was forced to move up to 155 in his last fight against Jai Herbert, which almost ended up being a disaster. And now he's dropped back down to 145, so hopefully he can make the weight and be healthy on fight night. If this fight gets pulled, man, I mean, this card will be... But Bryce Mitchell, I mean, he's 6-0 in the UFC with all 6 fights being at 145, and he's been part of the UFC since 2018, and obviously his pro record is 15-0, but technically he does have a loss. He did lose to Brad Katona on The Ultimate Fighter. He got submitted in the 3rd round, but it's been smooth sailing for Mitchell since joining the UFC, and whoever wins this fight, I think it will be, 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot, especially if it's Bryce Mitchell. And matchup-wise, I mean, this is an amazing fight. Obviously, I see a lot of people, and I kind of half agree, but I don't fully agree. I've always given Bryce a lot of crap about his striking in the past, but, if you go back and you start, really looking at more of his striking performances, he is getting a lot better. I mean, this fight, he is the faster guy, I believe, with his feet. He uses a lot more footwork, and he tries to snipe with that rear cross, which he dropped Bobby Moffett with, he dropped Edson Barbosa with, so he has power in his hands. I mean, you got to admit that, and he has decent timing. And Ilia Topuria is a guy that is more of a marauder. I mean, he has real good boxing, but he loads up on all his shots, and he likes to pressure forward and kind of go forward and backwards in straight lines. He doesn't really cut the cage off the best, in my opinion, or has the fastest or best footwork. He more just tries to, walk you down, get you on the inside, and then throw big combinations. And he has real tight boxing. He will sometimes get real wild and, overextend and throw these, big looping overhands and hooks, and that's what Jai Herbert was taking advantage of in his last fight by sticking and moving, landing head kicks, landing rear crosses, and he hurt Ilia several times. He dropped him bad with the head kick, and I've seen Ilia drop the head kick before. He has that boxing style where he likes to, dip a lot, move his head side to side, and, you can land a head kick while he's dipping into it. I mean, that's a big shot, and he's been able to recover, and the guy is super tough. I mean, he showed that. He's never going to quit on himself, and if he can back Bryce up and, get him in more of a pocket fight, then Ilia is going to tear him up. I mean, the guy has excellent body attacks. He'll go body head with his punches, and he has elite power, elite hand speed, and yeah, I mean, the guy has some of the best inside boxing in the UFC. His combinations are brutal. He can put you out cold with one punch, and he's just mean, man. He wants to get inside and just take, put your lights out, take your soul. So Ilia Topuria is a beast, and then he's also an elite grappler. I mean, the guy has good wrestling skills. He can get takedowns pretty well. In this fight, I think he's going to be looking to sprawl and brawl, though, because even if he gets takedowns on Bryce Mitchell, Mitchell's really good off of his back at, creating scrambles and creating different type of opportunities. I feel like he's really worked on that back control, because worked on being good off of his back, because previously, he's gotten held down and he hasn't looked as good off bottom or as active. But more recently, when he's gotten put on his back, he's immediately started attacking and creating opportunities for submissions and opportunities to scramble and get on top. And I think that Mitchell is the better grappler here against Ilia, actually. I feel like Mitchell has a real nice single, and Ilia, if he could move around on Ilia and get Ilia to overextend and not really he has to just avoid getting backed up against a fence or getting put in a position where he's in an exchange with Ilia, because if that happens, then he's going to get beat up. And if Mitchell can use his footwork, though, his movement, stick and move, maybe land some rear crosses, he could even hurt Ilia himself on the feet or pull him into his takedowns, more importantly. Pull him into single, and if Bryce can get on top, then he's going to control and do work, man. I mean, the guy has excellent control. He's super aggressive. His last fight, when he fought a guy that's more of an elite striker that actually knows what he's doing on the ground more than some of the lower-level opponents that he fought much smarter, and he didn't take a lot of risks. He was just kind of staying in the full guard and pounding him out, and I think that he'll do that against Ilia early if he gets a takedown, try to get him tired, and then take him out in that third round. And we did see, Ilia is an elite grappler. I'm not trying to take that away from him. He has real good front chokes, and he is a really good submission artist. But if you go back, you watch that fight with Youssef Zalal, he did lose position several times. He ended up on bottom a couple times, and Youssef Zalal was able to control him against the fence for a pretty good portion of the second round. We did see him get taken out with a single, even though he bounced right back up to his feet at one point. And, I feel like Bryce Mitchell, man, there's something about this guy. I mean, if you don't put him out cold, if you don't just shut his lights out, he's just going to keep coming. He's going to keep moving forward and doing his thing. And he's got this undying confidence, undying will that I think can win him certain fights. And when he gets on top, I mean, the guy's just a beast. He could slow you down, get you tired. I think he has a superior cardio. And, man, I mean, I don't know. This fight's real tough for me to call on paper. I think it could go either way. I could see Ilia sprawling and brawling his way to a knockout or an easy decision win. But, man, something is just telling me to go with Bryce Mitchell. I don't know if it's like a gut feeling or what it is, but something is telling me Bryce Mitchell is going to be able to move around, use his counter crosses, maybe even hurt Ilia, and, hit a couple singles, get Ilia tired. I think he has a big edge in the cardio, Bryce Mitchell does. And ultimately, I think Ilia is going to get gassed out. And I'm going to say Bryce Mitchell wins by third-round submission in this one. I think he's going to go out there and kind of prove that he's one of the elite guys at the weight. And we'll see what happens next for him. And this next one, we got the return of the gorilla, Darren Till. And Till's just not been able to put it together since his loss to Robert Whittaker. I feel like Till did have confidence and a renewed vigor when he moved to 185 initially. He was able to beat Kelvin Gastelum under very tough circumstances. He looked pretty lean on the scales for that fight and for the Robert Whittaker fight. And Till looked great in the Whittaker fight. He pushed Robert to the limit. He arguably won the fight to some people. But he dropped the decision, and in the process, he tore his ACL. And since having that knee injury, Till has had to pull out of 5 fights. He only has fought once in over 2 years. And the one time Till did fight, he looked bad. He got submitted against Derek Brunson. He looked in bad shape. And it seems like he's lost a lot of muscle mass, man. He's more skinny fat now, which is surprising. I think he might not have ever fully recovered from that knee injury in the Whitaker fight and just is not who he used to be physically. Even if you go look on his social media right now, I mean, this is not looking great shape. He's flabby. It's tough to trust him to even show up, much less perform. If this was Till who fought Robert Whitaker, I would say this is a great matchup for him, but I find it hard to pick Till against anyone in the UFC. And Dricus du Plessis, he's slowly working his way up the rankings. He had his first fight with the UFC in October of 2020. He's gone 3-0. He hasn't fought that frequently. He took a long layoff between the second and third fight, but now he's trying to get on a run. This is going to be his second fight in 5 months. And if he can beat Darren Till, that's going to be a big boost to his profile, give him a pretty big name. And style-wise, I mean, on paper, this is a good matchup for Darren Till because we got a guy in Dricus du Plessis who, he's a bad motherfucker. I mean, the guy's super athletic. He has big, huge power. And his striking is kind of awkward. Like, he has like a really weird high guard that he'll use and kind of will throw these counter hooks and very dangerous one-shot attacks, but he also will close the distance chin first, and that's where I say that it's a good matchup for Till, because Till's one of these guys that likes to hang out on the outside. He's low volume, but he's waiting to counter you, snipe you with that counter left hand, with the counter elbows, and if this was the Darren Till that fought Whitaker, who dropped Whitaker with an elbow, whose timing was on point, I would say he would probably knock out or, win a decision over Dricus du Plessis just by using his counter punching. But with him not looking in great shape and not being able to fight frequently, I just feel like Dricus du Plessis has to be the pick. I think du Plessis will be smart to throw oblique kicks, attack that knee again. I've seen him use that in the past and try to stomp on that knee and hurt it again like Robert Whitaker did, or maybe because it obviously wasn't fully recovered when he fought Derek Brunson. And, more importantly, just try to mix it up and get the takedowns. I think that would be the most effective game plan for du Plessis. On the feet, I think du Plessis is probably going to be faster and he can close the distance faster, but Till has that timing. He's going to have a chance to catch him and knock him out. And I just don't think that du Plessis, his striking technically is on the level of Till's. I think Till, this guy beat Wonderboy Thompson in a striking fight. And, I think his striking is a lot higher level and defensively responsible. I think, if Till comes in here and knocks him out or beats him by decision, I wouldn't be shocked, honestly. But I think du Plessis, he has good wrestling. He's an explosive guy. And if he can take down Till or get him tired by shooting takedowns, then he could open up a striking. And I think that he could start to have a lot more success in the fight. And I just got to go with du Plessis because I think he is at a much better point in his career. He has a lot of momentum right now. He has the confidence. He looks in way better shape than Darren Till. And something about Darren Till, man, I feel like he never really recovered after that Whitaker fight, and it's a shame, and it's just hard to have a lot of confidence in him, man. I don't even have confidence he's going to make it to the fight. I wouldn't be shocked if this fight gets pulled, so I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to win this fight, and I'm going to say that he wins via decision here. And for this next fight, we got a short notice bout between Santiago Ponzinibbio and Alex Morono. And Ponzinibbio has not really been the same since returning from his layoff and sicknesses. And in 2018, after he beat Neil Magny in the main event, he was right there knocking on the door of a title shot. He had won 7 in a row. He had actually been matched up with Kamaru Usman a couple times. And after the Magny fight, Ponzi had a lot of issues outside of the cage, and he didn't fight again until January of 2021. And when he returned, he got knocked out by Li Jingling in the first round. He did come back and get a win. He beat Miguel Baez in a back-and-forth war, but then he dropped his last 2 fights, both by split decision, to Jeff Neal and Michel Pereira, who are 2 animals, so there's no shame in those losses, but, obviously he kind of took himself out of contention, and he was expecting to fight a legend, former UFC champion, in Robbie Lawler, so, he probably had a lot of motivation this camp, and now he's going to have to reset and face a totally different style matchup in Alex Morono. On paper, this is a step down in competition for Ponzi. I mean, he should be the favorite in this one, and he is. But Alex Morono, the Great White, he's an underrated guy. I feel like he is someone that is underappreciated in the UFC. He's stepping on short notice here, and this would be the biggest win of his career. Even though he's taking this fight on short notice, I'm not really worried about him being in shape. He's a guy who owns a gym. He's courting fighters a lot, and he's engulfed in this fighting life. I think he's going to be ready to go. Maybe not as sharp as if he had a full camp, but still in shape and dangerous. And Morono currently has won 4 fights in a row. He's on the best run of his career, and he's been an underrated fighter for a long time. He's 11-4-1 in the UFC, and This is a step up in competition from the opponents he normally fights, though. Morono, even with the impressive record, is kind of a mid-card fighter. He's been mostly in there with middling welterweights or young up-and-comers. He was able to beat Max Griffin, and he beat Donald Cerrone. Those are probably the two best wins on his resume. Some people may scoff at the Cerrone win due to where he was in his career, but it's still a cool name to have on your record. And a majority of Morono's UFC wins have came against fighters outside the top 15. Now he's facing a perennial top 15 fighter in Ponzinibbio. If Morono wins this fight, he'll undoubtedly get a step up next, and he'll start to potentially have the chance to mix it up with the top 10, top 5 of the division. And Morono is a good striker. He has great footwork. He's fast. He's light on his feet. Very good fakes and feints. His jab is nasty. Good overhands. And he likes to counter with the 3-2s or the left hooks. He isn't a very active kicker, but he has nice lead leg kicks. He'll throw up quick and attack the body and head with them. He stays on point with his footwork. He rolls with punch as well, so he's pretty hard to hit clean. He's only been KO'd twice in 15 UFC fights, and he's winning there with some heavy hitters. The two fights where he got knocked out, they came against super heavy hitters and Chaos Williams and Nico Price. You can touch Morono's chin, you can put him out. He isn't the fastest, most athletic guy, relies more on technicality. If fighters can back him up and get into him exchange, he's a little bit vulnerable there. In the past, Morono used to be a lot more willing to brawl and throw sloppy overhands, but he's more efficient now. He's smarter. He did get dropped with a flying knee in his last fight. He got rocked with the spinning heel kick against Anthony Pettis, and he was able to survive both. So he is super tough, and you're going to have to put him out cold to get him to stop fighting. And he's a hard fighter to outstrike because he doesn't have the power to put fighters out, but his accuracy, volume, and footwork is very effective, and he can keep on that movement game for 3 rounds. And Morono is not a great wrestler, and he has fights where he's gotten taken down and controlled and lost that way. In terms of grappling, he is a black belt, and I will say recently he's gotten a lot better at, showing some urgency to get back up to his feet when taken down, creating scrambles and standing back up. And wrestlers in the past have been able to grind him out for 15 minutes, but in this fight, I don't really see that happening with Ponzinibbio. And Morono's coming in on short notice here, but hopefully he is in good shape, has the cardio on point, and he does have, probably a good idea of a game plan because we did have Jeff Neal fight Ponzinibbio. They come out of the same gym, and Alex Morono is a guy that's very influential over there in terms of, game plans and things like that, so he probably did help Jeff Neal prepare for that fight. And Santiago Ponzinibbio is a very good striker himself. On the feet, he's fast, good movement, has a nasty jab, uses the jab to set up the straight right hand, closes distance fast. In the pocket, he has a sizable advantage, I feel. He's really good at doubling, tripling up on the jab, then finding the hard shots. And he's a bit more fluid and comfortable exchanging in comparison to Morono. He has nasty leg kicks, but outside of that, he's basically a boxer. And he's much better when he can counter the pressure of opponents and then dart in with the jab or the 2-3, or if he can back you up against the cage and go to work with the combos. He does a good job pull countering, and he picked his shots well in the pocket. In this fight, he's going to have to track down Morono, though, and force more of a pocket fight. And I think Morono is a little better with the range striking game. If he can get Ponzi to chase him, work his footwork, jab, overhands, he could maybe pick Ponzi apart. And Ponzi is the faster, more explosive, powerful fighter. And if Morono stands in front of Ponzinibbio, I think he will probably get knocked out. But I think that Morono actually has the better durability. And if he uses that footwork and movement, he could have success on the feet. Ponzinibbio is going to get the fight he wants here. There won't be any takedowns from either fighter here. I doubt anyone is going to wrestle, and I think if someone does, it will be Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio was able to take down Jeff Neal briefly, and if he's struggling with the stand-up, he may try to back Morono up and take him down because you've seen Morono lose that way. And obviously, Robbie Lawler's a guy that has struggled a little with wrestlers too. I haven't really seen much from toppers from Ponzi, though, and I think he'll struggle to hold Morono down. Ponzi's a guy with great takedown defense, and obviously in this fight, I don't think he's going to really have to use it, but he's super tough. He comes in good shape. He'll fight for 15, 25 minutes. He's willing to get in a war. And I think this fight's going to come down to who stays more disciplined, who could stick to a better game plan. Morono, I think, is going to be, if he fights smart, sticking and moving, working the jab, using his footwork, accuracy. And if he can maintain the footwork for 15 minutes and not get goaded into a pocket fight, he should have a good chance to win. Ponzi's going to have to try to pressure, chop the legs, land the big jab, the big right hand, and, force up Raul. Ultimately, he's going to need to land some heavy blows that change the tide of the fight, or I think it could be a long night for him. And I think the line is pretty accurate. I was able to get some of that opening line with Morono at plus 220, I may have bet on him, but I'm going to pass at, him at 155. I don't really think there's there's the value there. I think that's probably an accurate line. But as a pick, I'm actually going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with Alex Morono, even on short notice. I feel like Santiago Ponzinibbio, 36 years old, he's taking a lot of damage. And, you know, eventually I feel like he's going to kind of fall off. And I think Morono, 32, 4 fights in a row that he's won. He is training with a really good gym now with Fortis, and it seems like he has all his ducks in a row. And I feel like he's going to come in here and be able to squeak out a big win with the striking and, you know, get one of the biggest wins of his career. So I'm going to go with Morono here to win in the upset on short notice. And this next fight, you know, we got Paddy Pimblett. He's going to be making his pay-per-view debut for the UFC. He's in the co-main event, which is a massive spot for him here. And he has a pretty tough opponent in Jared Gordon, who is a guy that's 7-4 in the UFC, who's been in there with a lot higher level opposition in comparison to Paddy Pimblett, and it's a good fight for Pimblett. I mean, this is a huge opportunity here. It's a co-main event slot and just his 4th UFC fight, and he wasn't initially the co-main event, but due to the title fight falling off between Glover and Jury, the co-main event fighters were elevated to the main event, and Paddy got elevated. So it's obvious why they're putting Paddy as the co-main event with the star power, but this, to me, has to be one of the worst co-main events in pay-per-view history. I mean, I can't remember another pay-per-view co-main event that featured 2 unranked fighters before, but, you know, if you guys can remember, I mean, put it down below. Like, when was the last time the UFC had a co-main event between 2 unranked fighters on a pay-per-view? Because I can't remember, but nonetheless, it should be a fun fight. I mean, his opponent, Jared Gordon, he already has 11 UFC fights, and it's a bit surprising to me. I still feel like Gordon is getting his feet wet in the UFC, but definitely a veteran by now. And his experience and opposition level has been much higher than Paddy's, in my opinion, like I said. Currently, I would say the best fighter that Paddy has fought in his entire career is Soren Beck, and that's at 155. He did fight Arosa and Nadir Amani, but those are 145-pound fights, and neither fighter was highly ranked in the world when Paddy fought them. And when you look at those 3 fights, he lost to Soren Beck, he lost to Nadir Amani, and he arguably lost to Julian Arosa. And Jared Gordon, he's been in the octagon with guys like Charles Oliveira, Diego Ferreira, Grant Dawson, Leo Santos, Joe Selecki, Bill Algeo. I mean, a lot higher level of opposition. And Gordon needs to put all that experience to use and be on point on fight night. One of the first things that fighters have to, you know, have on point when they face a big star like Paddy Pimblett, especially with this being a pay-per-view co-main event, is the mindset. Gordon needs to be locked in. He can't let the moment overtake him, and if he can't do that, he's not going to win the fight. So that's the first battle. And Pimblett, I mean, he's an aggressive grappler, dangerous submission skills, very explosive out the gates. He has 11 first-round finishes, and his striking, I feel, is not really that good. I mean, many people act as if Pimblett's a power puncher or a knockout artist, but outside of his win over Venjamini, he just has not shown that ability. On the feet, he, to me, is basically a left-sided fighter. He can throw a lot of left kicks. He fights from orthodox most of the time, but he'll throw a lot of lead leg attacks, side kicks, round kicks with the lead leg, and then he will switch stances and throw heavier kicks from the left leg from southpaw. And he likes to throw the check hook. That's probably his best punch on the feet, the lead left hook. He'll sometimes throw the straight right or the straight left, depending which stance he's in, but not that often. And Paddy is mainly, like I said, a fighter that attacks from the left side. He doesn't really throw many right hands or right kicks. The only time I really ever saw him, you know, explode in with a big, you know, right-handed shots are when he fought Luigi Vendramini. He hurt him and then exploded in through these power hooks and got him out of there. But that's not something that's been a, you know, big part of his career. And he's not an elite wrestler, but he does have a good single. He'll catch kicks, take guys down, and he takes advantage of slips or mistakes from his opponents really well. And when he gets on top, he's really good at taking the back, great control, submissions from there. And the majority of Pimblett's submission wins are rear naked chokes. He's good in putting fighters face down, working ground and pound until they win out, expose their neck, and then, you know, Pimblett can take that neck and go home. His takedown defense is not the greatest. He also can be controlled against a clinch in the cage. In 2 of his losses to Nadir Amani and Soren Beck, he got taken down and grinded out. His last fight, I would say he lost the first round. He got taken down 3 times. He got held against the fence for the majority of that round. And he was pulling guillotine a lot, trying to jump guillotine and get the submission win that way. And against Jared Gordon, I would not come with that game plan. I would definitely not pull guard. But Pimblett has been taken down actually in all of his UFC fights so far. And he's definitely more of a top game player. He isn't really that dangerous off bottom. He does have good front chokes, like guillotines, like I said, but he wasn't able to finish him on Jordan Levitt, and I doubt he'll be able to finish him on a John Danaher brown belt like Jared Gordon. And Pimblett's cardio historically is not the best. If he can't finish in the first 2 rounds, he slows down, and that could be a big factor. If Gordon can stuff some takedowns, pressure Paddy, and make it an ugly fight, Pimblett has to, feel like he has a little bit of worry there with the cardio advantage for Gordon. But another thing about Pimblett, I feel like he has to be confident that he can get the back of Jared Gordon. Gordon has had his back taken in several fights. He got finished from the back mount against Diego Ferreira and Grant Dawson, and that's Paddy Pimblett's position. So Pimblett can get to the back. He's going to be in heaven there. And Jared Gordon is a grinder. He's a brown belt under John Danaher in jiu-jitsu. So he's very high level on the ground. And on the feet, I think this fight is competitive because neither fighter is great with the stand-up. But even though Gordon is a better boxer, he's a more technically sound striker. He is not as explosive or fast as Paddy. And Paddy's a little bit more dynamic. He's a better kicker. And it'll make the fight stand up close, I think. I think Paddy is going to have a chance to land a big kill shot with a shot up the middle, like an uppercut, a flying knee, and things like that, because Gordon has struggled with that. But if Gordon can back up Paddy, get him going backwards, kind of negate the kicks, and keep the jab in his face, counter with the hooks, the overhands when Paddy tries to get aggressive, then he could start to take over on the feet and be this pure striker. I think he has a big edge in the boxing. He's good at attacking the body to come up to the head and open shots up. And if he can, be diligent with the body attack and the leg attacks on Pimblett, then he could slow him down. And Gordon is decent defensively, but like you said, he gets hit with shots up the middle. And he is tough, but he's been knocked out 4 times, so his chin is a little bit questionable. And he's a strong grappler. His wrestling is good, but not great. And he does do a good job using his pressure to backfire up and clinch him against the cage, though. And he has good takedowns and control against the cage. On top, he tends to just hold position. I think if Gordon gets on top of Pimblett, he'll probably be able to control him pretty effectively. Defensive wrestling-wise, Gordon has been taken down in a lot of fights, especially early. And he has had issues with long grapplers taking his back, and he tends to give his back up very easily. But he's good at staying safe and avoiding getting finished. He did get choked in the 3rd round against Grant Dawson, but he was able to actually have a lot of success earlier in that 3rd round. He was winning the whole 3rd round before he got finished, and he did fairly good in that fight. He just couldn't stop the takedowns of Dawson overall, who's a beast on the ground and a beast with the wrestling. And Gordon was able to survive and come back and beat Joe Selecki, though, after Selecki took his back in the 1st round. And one of the main things for Jared Gordon to do in this fight is get out of the 1st round. If he can do that, he's going to have the better cardio long term, most likely. He could start to take over. If he ends up on bottom with Paddy Pimblett, he's probably going to lose that round and have his back taken and have to worry about being defensive. So being on your back is the worst place to be in this fight for Jared Gordon. I think this fight should be closer to a pick'em, though. Jared Gordon opened at -145 favorite, and a ton of money came and steamed the Pimblett line. Now he's at -245. I think that his speed and athleticism maybe could allow him to land a big shot early and hurt Gordon and take the back and submit him or take him out in the 1st round. But if Pimblett can't get the 1st round finish, I think this fight really could be anyone's to win. Gordon is a superior boxer, and if he can keep the pressure on Paddy, back him up, clinch him against the cage, keep him there, grind him, he could, win the fight. I think he has the better wrestling. And if either fighter gets on top, I see them winning that round. This is one of these fights where I think a live betting opportunity could be there for Jared Gordon. If Paddy Pimblett gets him down, takes his back in the 1st round, threatens with the rear naked chokes, but is unable to finish, I would not be surprised to see Jared Gordon be able to come back, get the win. And if Jared Gordon can stuff the takedowns and pressure, then I think he will get Paddy tired, and he will be able to hold him against the cage and control him a little bit there. And I think he does have the superior boxing, cardio, and wrestling. Pimblett is more dangerous, explosive, athletic, and probably has the advantage in the grappling and the advantage with his kicks. I feel like, man, I'm going to go with Jared Gordon, man. I don't really like the pick. I kind of want to pick Pimblett, but I think the line is off, and I feel as if Jared Gordon, like I said, after the 1st round, if he's a big underdog, he's going to be a good live betting opportunity. And I'm going to pick Gordon to win this fight by decision. I think he'll grind him out against the cage. He'll be able to use his pressure to back him up. And if he can get out of the 1st round, I think he has a big chance to win this fight. Pimblett was able to catch Levitt in the 2nd round after landing a knee, took in his back, and submitted him. And if he wins this fight, I think he'll get the finish. And if it goes to decision, I think Gordon will win. So it's one of those fights, man, where I think Gordon will be winning until he gets finished, or he'll, just get finished early and lose the fight. But I'm going to go with Jared Gordon by decision. And lastly here, we got the main event. And in a crazy turn of events, the two-man Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, who were supposed to be the co-main event in a 3-round non-title fight, are now set to be fighting for the undisputed UFC light heavyweight title in a 5-round main event. Jiri Prochazka, the champ, suffered a bad injury that sidelined him for over a year. And in a bizarre decision, he decided to give up the title. I mean, if I was Jiri, you'd have to claw that belt away from me, because now when he comes back, he's probably not going to be getting pay-per-view points or championship money. And he did a very noble thing, though. He let the division keep rolling. The guy that got screwed big time is Glover Teixeira, because obviously he was trying to get one final crack at the belt. He's 43 years old, but now he's the odd man out here. The UFC wanted Glover to fight Magomed Ankalaev on Saturday night on short notice, and he wasn't willing to do that. And he wasn't willing to fight Jan because he had already fought Jan. He had a game plan for him. For Ankalaev, he would have had to, go in there with a southpaw, which for a wrestler is a big thing. I mean, you have to, kind of set up how you're going to shoot the level changes, and a southpaw totally changes that up, and he hasn't been training for that. So I don't really know why the UFC didn't let him fight Jan. I feel like that would have been a bigger fight than Ankalaev, but maybe they want to put the title on a younger guy that has years ahead of him. Jan is 39, Glover is 43, so both guys do not have a ton of fights at the top left. But it just makes me curious. I mean, if Jan wins, what are they going to do with Glover? Are they still not going to give him the title fight, or they're just going to give him the title fight if Jan wins? It doesn't really make sense to me why they wouldn't have just done it right away, but obviously this is a massive opportunity for both guys, for Magomed and Jan. Magomed doesn't really have that profile yet, and he's getting a fight in a main event for the belt, so if he wins, he's really going to change his life a lot. And for Jan, he was pining for the title shot with Prochazka very hard, and he had vowed to get his title back ever since he lost it. And he was going to have to go through Ankalaev in a non-title fight to get the chance for gold again. But now he gets to skip that step, and he's fighting Ankalaev for the belt. So Magomed Ankalaev, he's probably not known by casual fans as much, but at 18-1, 9-fight winning streak, he's the sizable favorite here. So he's a big favorite to beat Blachowicz. And Blachowicz, to me, he is one of the most underrated strikers in the UFC history, if you ask me. I don't think that Blachowicz gets respect he deserves for his striking. Everyone talks about his legendary Polish power, but honestly, he's very technical. If you look at Blachowicz's career, he's been able to outstrike every single opponent he's ever fought in the UFC. He beat up Rakic on the feet in the first round. He beat Israel Adesanya on the feet early. He beat up Dom Reyes on the feet, Jimmy Manuwa on the feet. He turned Prime Gustafsson into a wrestler. Even against Thiago Santos, I feel that Jan was winning the fight on the ground, or on the feet, but he was just clipped and knocked out. And that's the only loss due to strikes of Blachowicz's career. So he's a guy that's extremely durable, and he's done really well historically against southpaws. I mean, when you got a southpaw guy, it opens up that kick to the liver. And when you watch the fight with Dom Reyes, I mean, he was just destroying him with that lead leg kick to the side of his body. He had that huge mark on his body, and then he was landing the check hook to the body kick, the jab to the body kick, and really, really going diligently to the body. I think he's going to be doing that here. And Jan has really good jab, really solid boxing fundamentals. He trains with Artur Spilka and other really elite boxers over there in Poland. And, I feel like in the striking realm, he's going to be very competitive. I mean, he's going to have the reach advantage. He's going to be spamming that body kick. He's going to be trying to get Ankalaev tired. And then I feel like in the exchanges, he's going to be a competitive striker with him, especially if it's just a pure striking fight. And for Magomed Ankalaev, I mean, he's southpaw, super athletic, accurate on the feet, very powerful. Good job fighting, smart and technical. He doesn't really expose or overextend. Fights at a very high pace, southpaw. And he will pick apart fighters on the outside with his kicks, leg kicks, front kicks to the body, round kicks to the body, nasty check hook, really good straight left hand. His 1-2s are devastating. He's extremely fast hand, super clean, just snipes guys, and he can make fighters not want to attack due to his ability to counter and control distance. So he is very efficient. He controls the pace, the center of the cage in almost all his fights. Good head movement, but he does hold his hands low. And we have seen him dropped against Thiago Santos and Dalcha Lungiambula, who are explosive fighters who close the distance quick. Jan isn't really that type of guy that has that explosiveness, but he does explode forward with a rear cross fairly effectively, and if he does that and can land on Magomed, he could hurt him. And Jan Jan, I feel like he's going to struggle to find that chin all the time with Ankalaev, and that's why I think he's going to be ripping the body. And for Ankalaev, I think he's going to have to wrestle here. I think that's going to be the smart go-to in this fight. Blachowicz's kryptonite has been wrestlers with heavy top pressure. He's 0-4 in the UFC in fights where he's been taken down more than once. And when Blachowicz is taken down, he will threaten with low percentage submissions from his full guard, but he isn't super dangerous. He doesn't have much of a get-up game. He can be held down, beat up with ground and pound, and more importantly, he has a tendency to start to gas out. For Magomed Ankalaev, he's only had one fight in his 10-fight UFC career where he's gotten more than one takedown. So that has not really been a game plan that Ankalaev has used in the past frequently. But getting takedowns here is a clear path to victory. And I did see certain fights where Ankalaev, in the regional scene career, did get takedowns, some clinch control, and had some really devastating ground and pound. And Ankalaev did get submitted against Paul Craig. And one thing that's interesting, big shout out to my boy, my Polish friend Maciej. He did tell me that Jan Blachowicz has his jiu-jitsu coach in the corner with him for the first time for this fight. So that's interesting. I mean, to me, that makes me think that Blachowicz is being smart. I mean, he knows that Ankalaev's probably going to try to take him down. Ankalaev has been submitted off his back in the past, so let's work on that jiu-jitsu a lot. And let's try to have the jiu-jitsu coach in your corner and try to give you some pointers to say, okay, man, you got to do this to submit this guy in this next round if he takes you down again. So at least Blachowicz is showing that he knows his deficiencies and maybe trying to, work on them. But Ankalaev, I mean, the guy, when he gets on top, has really heavy top pressure. He'll sit in full guard or half guard and just grind it out. And I don't really see Jan all of a sudden, even though, like I just said, he's working with the jiu-jitsu coach more now, he's going to have him in his corner. I don't think he's going to all of a sudden have a full guard like Paul Craig. I still feel like Ankalaev is probably going to be able to control him and be effective if he does take him down. Ankalaev is a Greco-Roman guy. He's a champion Greco-Roman fighter. So I feel like he should try to get the clinch, just hold Jan against the cage, tax on him, even if you can't take him down, make it where you're going to get him tired, you're going to slow down the pace of the fight and make it an easier fight going forward. Because on the feet, if this is a striking fight, I kind of lean towards Jan Blachowicz getting the job done. But Ankalaev is the younger fighter by 9 years. He's probably going to push a higher pace without getting tired. And if he fights smart, he wrestles early and often, gets Jan tired, and he should make this fight easy. I mean, Magomed Ankalaev, I think, should try to work his way into the clinch. If he can get there and control him against the cage, hit takedowns. He has fast shots, too, and he can back guys up. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him do that here. He has good fight IQ, and he's going to have a good game plan. And I feel like Jan is a live underdog, like always. I mean, whenever you have Jan Blachowicz in that underdog position, he always is someone that you have to look at and potentially bet him. I mean, when's the last time he lost as an underdog? I mean, he did lose to Glover, but he was a favorite in that fight. He beat Rakic. He was an underdog in that one. He was the underdog against Corey Anderson. He was the underdog against Luke Rockhold. He was the underdog against Dom Reyes. The only fight where he was a favorite was against recently was against Jacare Souza and against Glover. And overall in his UFC career, he's 10-2 as the underdog. I mean, that's pretty amazing for Jan Blachowicz. I mean, the guy goes in there and he always beats the odds. But I'm going to go with Ankalaev in this one, 48-47. I think it's going to be a real competitive fight, actually. But I think that Magomed is going to maybe struggle a little bit early with the body kicks and the striking of Jan. Go to the grappling, hold him against the cage, and start to get him a little bit tired. I think Jan could maybe steal a couple of the early rounds, maybe like the first and the third or the first and the second. And then after that, I think Ankalaev's going to start to take over. And I'm going to go with Ankalaev to win the fight by decision. But as a bet, I mean, I think it's a dog or pass fight. I mean, to bet against Jan Blachowicz as the underdog, especially when you've got almost minus 300 price tag on Ankalaev, I think it's a little bit ridiculous, quite honestly. I think Jan has some value for sure, but just can't get myself to picking him. So I'm going to go with Ankalaev to win this fight by decision, become the undisputed champ. So for my most confident pick on this card, I'm going to go with Cameron Simone. And for my parlay of the week, I'm going to go with Cameron Simone and Edmen Shahbazyan. And besides that, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys learned something. You guys like this video. I'm going to be putting out a Bellator predictions video tomorrow, so definitely be on the lookout for that on the channel. And like I said at the start of the video, let's get some interaction on this one, man. Let's get 100 likes. Let's get some comments down below. I really would appreciate that. And if you guys want to join the Patreon, want to get access to all my bets for this card, want to get access to all my bets for Bellator, for Aries FC, for KSW, for LFA, even FAC has lines, which I was a little surprised seeing that. James Krause Promotion still having lines, still being on Fight Pass. Maybe they kind of took him out of the promotional limelight with that one. I don't know. But yeah, man, besides that, thanks for watching, guys. And definitely, you know, come over, make some money. I really urge you guys to do that. I feel like it's a real good deal to go over there on that Patreon and get some cash, man. I mean, we are over 90 units on the year, and everyone that was over on the Patreon for the whole year definitely made a lot of money on the bets. So definitely think it's a good value. And besides that, man, thanks everyone that supports the channel. I'll be back next week. I'll be back for the Bellator video tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll talk to you guys later.